Good morning, guys. Am I audible to all of you?
Good morning, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. My screen is also visible to all of you, right?
Yes.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay. So today we are also going to continue our asynchronous programming and a few more classes also, right? So basically, today we are going to discuss how to execute multiple tasks in C# using asynchronous program, right? Asynchronous programming means we are going to use one method called when_all, and using this when_all method, I will show you example how you can execute multiple tasks and how you can, how you can limit the number of concurrent tasks to be executed, right? Those things we are going to discuss, right? So far, we have been executing one task at a time, but sometimes, right? But sometimes we will have many tasks, and that we want to execute simultaneously, right? And if you want to execute multiple tasks, right? Multiple tasks in the sense multiple asynchronous tasks, right? So as of now, we have discussing only one async task at a time, but sometimes you will have many asynchronous tasks, right? Many async tasks that you want to execute simultaneously. And if you want, right? And for that purpose, what method we are going to use? We are going to use when_all method, right? With when_all method, we can take a list of a task and all the tasks will be executing concurrently, right? Let us try to understand this example. I'm having a credit card class, right? And this credit card class means you can consider it's a real-time example, right? And where we want to process the credit card. Process the credit card means what you know nowadays, the credit card companies are calling you again and again, right? Per day they might be calling 1,000 people. Out of 1,000 people, it's possible that 50 people or 100 people are interested for the credit card, and for those 100 people they want to process the credit card. Means what is the what should be the name on the credit card, what is the credit card number, right? Everything they have to process, and for that purpose, let's assume we are going to develop one class, right? We are going to develop one application to process the credit card, right? And you can see I have created a class called the credit card number, and simply in this card, I am having two properties. One is credit card name and another is credit card number, right? So if you want, you can put more properties. That is up to you. But for the simplicity purpose, we are just putting these two information, right? Then I have a class generate credit card. Generate credit card means what? Now I will give one integer value to this method, and that many number of cards this method is going to create, and it is going to return me that list, right? Suppose I'm putting 10, right? Then this method is going to create 10 credit card, and all the 10 credit cards is going to be stored inside a collection of a list type. And we have already discussed what is this list of a credit card. Means what is credit card is a uh, user defined type, and I want to create a collection of that type, so I'm passing credit card as a parameter to this. And how many number of items is going to add inside this collection, basically that will be decided by this number parameter what I'm passing to this method. Now if you look at the for each for loop, right? Here I'm using integer I equals to 0, I less than number, right? And I plus plus. Then what I'm doing, I'm creating in an instance of a credit card, and while I'm creating the instance, I'm using I'm using class initializer, right? So, and using that class initializer, I'm initializing the card number and the name properties. And what basically I'm trying to doing is what this is the number, and I'm just appending I means one. So at the end of this string. And what is the name? Name is also going to be similar, credit card hyphen, and what is the value. And once I create the credit class, credit card instance, I'm storing that instance using this list collection. And you know, in this class, there is a method called add, and that method basically we are using, right, to add the elements. And here I'm using the add method, and I'm adding the card. And finally, that list collection what I have created inside this class, sorry, inside this method, that is what I am written, right? So if you want to generate a 10 credit card, then you have to call this method by passing the value 10. If you want to create a 20 credit card, then you have to pass this, you have to call this method by passing the value 20. If you want to create 30 credit card, then you have to pass the value 30. So basically, this you can consider it's kind of generic method, right? Where you just need to pass one integer number and that many number of a credit card, this method will generate and return. Is that clear? What is this method is all about?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Right. Next we need to process, we need to create one async method to process the credit card. For this, what we are going to do, we are going to create one async method. This async method will create the credit card as a parameter and then process that, right? Here you may any API call to process the credit. Okay. So basically what happened now, once you generate this credit card, then you need one method to process the credit card, right? For that purpose, what I'm trying to do is, what I'm doing is I'm creating one async method. You can see this is the process credit card method, right? For example, somewhere I need to somewhere I created 10 credit cards, right? Then I need to process the credit card one by one. And for that purpose, from that collection, from that credit card collection, I will pick one by one the credit card and I will call this method. And this method is basically going to process the credit card. So basically process the credit card means it might be stored this credit card object in the database, right? Or it might be for storing that information in the database, right? It might be called another API, right? Or it might be called the database crowd. I mean that it might be communicate with another API where that API is going to communicate with the database, or it might be possible that it is calling some DB operation method, right? And for that simplicity purpose, I'm not going to call any APIs here, or I'm not doing any kind of a database operation. Simply, I'm delaying the application execution by 1 second. And here I'm using a task.delay. And this delay method is an asynchronous method that is available in the task class. And I am using await operator. See, in this case, if I'm using the await operator and if I'm not using the await operator, then what is the difference? Can anybody tell me?
It won't wait and the next lines will be executed.
Exactly. If I'm not using await operator, then after calling this method, it will immediately execute the line number 48. It will not wait till the method execution completed. If I'm using the await operator, then what will happen? Can anybody tell me?
It's gonna skip to the main thread.
So in that case, what will happen? Now await means it will suspend the main thread or the thread which is executing this code, right? It will suspend that thread and it will wait till this method execution is completed, right? Once the method execution completed, again the thread will come into this statement and again that thread is going to continue its execution. Is that clear? Yes. And guys, one more thing, you can use this await operator only when your method is async, right? So in this case, if you go to the definition, then you will see that this method is returning a task, right? This method is returning a task. So whenever it is returning a task, then you can use that await operator, right? So in this case, it is returning a task, right? So now what you need to do, once you call the API or once you call the database, right? Once it store the data in the database, then you need to give one message. What message you are giving here? You are just giving that message, right? The credit card number and name is processed, right? This credit card number and name is processed, right? This is the message that I am returning from this method, which will indicate whether the credit card is processed or not. And after then, I'm printing this statement in the console, right? The credit card number, this is processed, right? So the credit card number is whatever may be the number that is coming as part as a parameter to this class, right? That number I'm printing here, and then I'm returning the message. What exactly this message property containing this statement, right? So this is a simple. So now, suppose you want to process 10 credit card, you have to use a loop, and using that loop, you will call this method one by one. Is that clear? What is this process card method is going to return? Guys?
Yes.
right?
Yes, it's clear. Thank you.
Right. So basically, and guys, remember, it is a async method which is returning a task of string. Why I'm using task of string? Can anybody tell me?
Because it's returning a string.
Returning a string.
The string.
I'm returning a string. That's why I'm using that as task of string. Right now, suppose I want to return this value. Right. Suppose I want to return this value, list of a credit card. Then what should be the type here? Suppose I'm saying, suppose I'm going to return this list of a credit card. Then what should be the type?
Credit
Credit
card.
List the cards.
Sorry?
List the cards.
Then in this case, if you want to return this thing, right? Suppose instead of a message, if you want to return this thing, right? Return credit cards, then what is the type of a credit cards? List of a credit card.
List the credit card.
Have to, you not only pass credit card, you have to pass list of a credit cards. That is clear. Is that clear? Because I'm going to return list
Yes,
of a
it's
credit
very
card.
clear, sir.
So I have to specify that list of a credit card, not only credit card. So this is the point that you need to remember. Going further, we are going to use that. So in this case, I'm going to return a string value. So I'm just passing task of string. If I want to return a collection, then you have to pass that collection again. Right? So here you have to pass list of a string. So this is the second thing that we have done, right? You can see now. Next, we are creating another asynchronous method, right? Where we will execute multiple tasks. And as of now, if you will remember, this is just a method for creating a collection, and this is the method which is processing the credit card one by one. Now, what is our requirement? Now, our requirement is we want to create an asynchronous method where we will execute multiple asynchronous tasks parallelly or asynchronously or concurrently. For this purpose, we are creating one method, right? And if you see, so this is the generate credit card method we have discussed. This is the process credit card method we have discussed. Now we will create one asynchronous method where we are going to process or where we are going to execute multiple tasks concurrently, right? And for that purpose, I'm creating this asynchronous method. And this asynchronous method taking one credit card collection as a parameter, I mean from anywhere, right? So for example, from the main method, I will create this generate credit card method by passing one integer value. Then this method will return one collection. That collection I'm passing as an input parameter to this. Suppose you created a 10 credit card, right? Then you want to process those 10 credit card. Then in that case, you are passing that 10 credit card to this method. So this is the reason why I'm taking this as a parameter. So this collection now can handle, now can store a collection of a credit card, right? Once you store the credit card, I'm not going to discuss what is this thing. You should know what is this stopwatch and what is the start and stop method. So basically, I'm using here stopwatch, right, to measure the time taken by this statement, right, to measure the time what this in order to execute a collection of a 10 credit card or 20 credit card or 50 credit card, how much time this asynchronous operation takes. To measure that time, I'm using stopwatch. I'm starting the stopwatch here. I'm stopping the stopwatch here. And here I'm printing how much time it is taken in seconds, right? Then what happened? Right. So once you have the credit card, so what I'm creating a list of task of a string. Why I'm creating a list of a task of a string, that I will tell you, right? Now, what I'm trying to do is I'm using a for each loop, right? And I'm using a for each loop, and each time, right, your loop will be execute. It will hand over that credit card information to this variable. This variable type, if you are interested, you can use var. Otherwise, you can use credit card. Suppose if I'm creating a list of integers, right? Then I have to declare this variable as integer. If I'm creating a list of a string, then I have to declare this variable as string. But in this case, it is a list of a credit card. Then I have to create this variable type as a credit card. This is the reason why I'm creating credit card. So from this collection, one by one, it will handle all the credit card to this variable and it will process the credit card. This is the important thing, right? To process the credit card, which method I am going to call? right? This
Process card.
process card method, and this process card method is going to process the credit card. So what I'm trying to do is I'm calling the process card method, and this process card method returning what?
Task string.
Task of
String.
string. So as this process card method returning me task of a string, so I'm creating a collection, right? I'm creating a collection of what type?
Task of string.
Task of string. Why I'm creating?
List.
I'm creating a collection of a list type which is going to hold task of a string. That means whatever this method is going to return, that is what I'm going to store inside this task collection. Why I'm creating a collection? Because in this case, I have a multiple credit card. I have 10 credit card. I want to store the response of a 10 times, right? For that purpose, I'm creating a collection, right? Each time you call this method is going to return task of a string, right? So in this case, instead of a variable, you can also write a task of a string, right? And once you got the response, you can add that response inside this collection, right? Is that clear what is this method is doing and what is the use of this parameter? Clear or not?
Yeah, just one question only. I don't get very well how you make a list.
Sorry? Can you repeat your question? Your voice is not, your voice is breakable. So simply see, in this case, what this method is going to return?
No, the question is, you read
Again, guys, his voice is audible to all of you or not?
No, sir,
No,
it is
his
breaking.
voice is breaking bad. You cannot hear him. His voice is breaking.
His voice is breaking, right? Broken. So let me explain this thing. Okay, forgot about this statement. Now if I call this method, what this method is
Just type
going
it
to
in the
return?
chat.
Right? So now you just tell me if I call this method, what this method is going to return?
Task of string.
Right? Task of a string. Then if I want to store this task of a string in a collection, then which type of collection I need to create?
List collection task of string.
List collection task of string. Why I'm storing this response to a list of a task collection of string? Because I don't want to execute this method one by one. I want to process, right? If this credit card collection contain 10 elements, then I don't want to process those 10 credit card one by one. I want to process those 10 credit card concurrently. For that purpose, I'm storing this response in right what this method is returning into a collection of that type. So collection of that type means what type this method returning? Task of string. So I'm creating a collection of that type, task of string. And once you got the response, this response you can store easily inside this variable, right? Once I store, so at this time the task you have just created, the task is not processed, right? And when the task is going to be processed, right? See in the next statement what I have written, task.WhenAll, and to this WhenAll method I'm passing a collection of a task. I'm passing a collection of a task, and this this WhenAll method will ensure that once all the tasks are processed concurrently, then only I'm going to return, right? So this will ensure that once all the tasks are processed concurrently, then only it is going to execute the next statement. And at that time, as we have using the await keyword, so at this place the thread will be released. The thread is going to do the other task, right? Once all the tasks are processed, then again it will active and the rest of the statement is going to be executed. Now if you go to the definition of WhenAll method, right, then you will see that create a task that will complete when all of the tasks object in an enumerable collection are completed, right? So in this case, when all the tasks, so in this case how many tasks you have created, how many times you have called this process card method?
10.
That basically depend on the number of credit card you have. If you have 10 credit card, this method called 10 times. If you have 100 credit card, this method is called for 100 times. If you have 1 lakh credit card, right, 1 million credit card, that means this method is going to be called 1 million time, right? But in this case, right, in this case, as you can see here, I'm not using the await operator. In this statement, I have not using the await operator. Now, if I'm using the await operator, then it is going to be processed one by one, right? So you can see in this case, I'm not using the await operator. If I'm using the await operator, in this case, it is not going to work, right? So I'm not going using the await operator. Rather, what I'm using this await operator here. So here, so it will immediately process, right? It will call the statement as await operator is not over there. It will store the response in sheet variable like this, it will done, right? But in this case, you are not getting the response. Response you will get when you call the WhenAll method, right? So when you call the WhenAll method, right? So it will take all the tasks what you have created inside the for each loop, right? And when all the tasks are successfully completed, then only it is going to execute the next statement. So WhenAll method will ensure that all the tasks are completed, right? And when it is executing all the tasks, so as you have used the await keyword here, so it will not wait till all the methods are completed. The thread is released immediately, and the thread is going to be execute other codes in the application, right? And then when this method completes, right, when all the tasks are completed successfully, again it will come to this place and it will start executing the rest code in this statement, right? Now what I'm trying to do here is I'm creating 10 credit cards. So if you want to create a 10 credit card, then you have to call this method generate credit card, and what value you need to pass? You need to pass 10. So I have generated 10 credit card, and you can show the count, right? So this is a list collection class. So there is a property called count. Already we have discussed that count is going to return me the number of elements that are available inside this collection, right? Once you have the credit card, right, then you can call that you can pass that collection of a credit card to this process credit card method. So I'm passing this collection to this process credit card method. So this process credit card method now receive 10 credit cards, right? And then it is looping through all the credit card and calling this process card method, right? And if you see each time you call the process card method, then it is delaying the execution by 1 second, right? So this statement is nothing but it will delay the rest of the statement execution by 1 second. So at least, so each time you call this process card method, right, the method execution is going to take little more than 1 second. Why? Because we are intentionally delaying the execution for 1 second. Means at least a little more than 1 second it is going to be take to process this credit card, right? And once all the credit card are processed, then it is going to return that number of a credit card processed and how much time it took to process the credit card, right? So in this case, I'm taking elapsed in milliseconds, right? If you do not want the in second, then you can also write ms, milliseconds, right? So now if you run the application right now, as per your understanding, so this task.WhenAll, so here multiple tasks are going to be executed concurrently, right? See how you can make sure that in this statement, multiple tasks are going to be executed concurrently. Okay, you just tell me if this method taking little more than 1 second to execute the statement, right, that is present inside this method, then if I'm calling this method 10 times, then how much time it should take to complete the execution of those 10 method calls?
10 seconds.
At least a little more than 10 seconds, because the delay is going to be for 10 seconds. 10 seconds, then for executing this statement, it should take some time. Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes, that means what, right? So it means if this task.WhenAll method is not executing concurrently, if the execution is sequentially, then the execution to execute this 10 credit card, it should take little more than 10 seconds. But if it is not taking that time, if it is executing all the 10 cards, right? If it is executing or if it is processing all the 10 cards, right, in little more than 1 second, right, little more than 1 second, then what it means? It means all the credit cards are processed concurrently or not? Yes or no? So basically, see, here you have two scenarios, right? Scenario one, the execution time is going to be at least, or you can say little more than 1 second, little more than 10 seconds, right? Little more than 10 seconds means what? The execution is happening one by one. Little more than 1 second means what? The
All at the
execution
same time.
concurrently. Yes or no?
Yeah, simultaneously
Right?
concurrently, yes.
Right, the execution happening concurrently or parallelly, you can also say. So basically, if in this case, if I'm getting the output in little more than 1 second, it means the multiple tasks are executing concurrently. If I'm getting more than 10 seconds, means the execution is happening sequentially. Right, if I'm getting within little more than 1 second, means multiple tasks are executing concurrently. Now let's run the application and see the output. Right, processing of a 10 credit card done in how many milliseconds?
1,000.
Or how many seconds, can anybody tell me?
1 second.
Little more than 1 second.
1 second.
And you can see main method thread credit card generated, and after then, so it is not waiting till the credit card operation completed, right? Main thread completed. Why? Now in this statement, when you use the await operator and when you call the WhenAll method, right, the main thread is released, and when the main thread is released, the main thread execution completed, and after then you can see this method, right, what I have written here within the process card method, console.writeLine statement. This statement is processed, and you can see as we are executing the credit card sequentially, right, not sequentially, as it is executing concurrently. You can see there is no proper order. You can see credit card number 795468203 they are not processing in sequentially. Why? Because the execution is not happening sequentially. In this case, concurrently it is executing, so any random order it will execute the statement. Is that clear? Clear or
So
not?
is it random order that is processing the cards, or is it random order that is printing the cards out?
Random order. See, whenever you are using parallel programming, asynchronous programming, or multi-threading, both are, see, behind the scene, multiple threads are going to be execute the task, right? If multiple threads executing, then you cannot predict the order. Already we have discussed this thing in multi-threading, that you cannot predict the output. Right, predict the output means any sequence they are going to be execute. They can pick the card randomly, and they can process the card randomly, which will get the first priority that you cannot simply predict. Clear?
So one doubt.
Yeah.
The process card method which is there here in for each loop, inside the for each loop, the process card of credit card will return us the string, right? The string which is there, and response will contain the string, or what?
No.
it is storing?
What the response will contain? In this case, it is not containing the string, right? I'm not coming to that response part yet, right? I'll come to that part. See, it is not a single task. So in this case, I'm not returning. I'm not executing a single task. I'm executing multiple tasks. So whenever I'm executing multiple tasks, then how you will handle the output, right? That is what I'm going to discuss, right? But not now. That I will discuss today, right? But for now, in this example, I'm not handling the response, right? But I will show you example how to handle the response, right? So, but for now, you just need to remember how the multiple tasks are executed. How to handle the response of a multiple task, that is what I am going to show you, right? But in this case, if you want to see what this the response is going to contain, just use the debugger, right? And once you run the application F10, right? So in this case, you can see what is this is containing, this is containing, waiting for activation, right? The method is not yet activated. When you call this WhenAll method, right? Then this method is going to be processed. Right? So I'll show you definitely how the response you are going to manage, right? Even if a string response, if a collection response, right? The JSON, right? Basically, if you are having a collection, if in real time, you will get the response in the JSON format. Then how you will process that response? If you are getting the response directly in string format, like in this example, it's very easy. You can handle it very easily. But if you are getting the response in a class type, right? JSON array, then how you will handle that? That is also what I am going to discuss today. But for now, for this particular example, any question if you have, then you can ask me.
Okay, so the process card, since it is async, it is not directly giving the output what it had to give. It will only process through the task.
Right. So don't forget about the output in this case. I'm saying again and again, how to handle the output that I will discuss.
Okay.
Apart from that output thing, anything is, if you do have any question, then you can ask.
No, sir, no.
Clear? Any question from anyone else? Output thing I am going to
Yes.
discuss today only.
Can you hear me now well or not?
Yes, I can hear you now well. Again, your voice is breaking. So it's better you can put, say, your voice is breakable. So it's better you can put your message on the chat.
Okay.
Right? So you can put your message query in the chat. So in this case, this is how you can execute multiple tasks, right? Right now what will happen? See, in this case, if I'm using the await keyword, right, then this is the thing that is happening, right? But if I do not want to use the await keyword, then what will be the thing, right? So in this case, what I'm trying to do is, okay, let me stop the debugger, right? And I do not want to use the await keyword. Sorry, I do not want to use the when.all. So what in that case I'm going to do? I'm using this one. Right? So in this case, right, so in this case, it is not going to return. See, once you use the await keyword, it is not going to return this thing. So let me comment this thing, right? So in this case, you can see what I'm trying to do is I'm not using the WhenAll method, right? So I'm processing the credit card one by one. So in this case, you can see I am calling the process card method. I'm using the await operator means what? Now it will process this method. Then only it is going to execute the next loop statement in the body, right? So you can generate a list of a task and then the task one will execute the list in parallel processing. Yes, absolutely right. Right, so this is what happening in this case. In this case, you are just so the statement what we have written now. So in this case, suppose I'm removing this one, and if I'm adding this one, and if I'm doing this thing, so in this case, what will happen? Now this statement is not going to process immediately. It is going to wait and wait. If I use this await keyword here, right, then it is going to process immediately. But I'm not using await here, right? So as I'm not using await, so it is simply, it is not that the return type of this method is list of string, right? So it will store that response list of string in this variable, and I'm just adding that response to this method, right? And that means what? I'm just creating a task. And when I call this WhenAll method, right, all the tasks are going to be executed concurrently, right? And then once all the method execution completed, then only this await method, right? So until and unless all the methods are not executed, the thread will be released and the thread is going to do different task. And once all the methods are executed, then again the thread will come to this place and it will going to execute rest of the statements, right? So now what I'm trying to do is I'm going to show you the example without using the WhenAll method. So I'm just moving these things, right? So you can see, and here what I'm trying to do, I'm using the await operator, right? So in this case, as I'm using the await operator, so you just guys tell me currently I'm using the await operator. Then what this method is going to return? Once this method processed, then what should be the return type?
String.
String. So you can see currently it is returning string. If I'm removing this await operator, then what it will return? Task
Task
of
of string.
string, because it is not processed, right? So in this case, you can see await. Await means once the operation is completed, then it will return that string. That string will be stored in this variable. Then the next loop is going to be happen, right? So in this case, can anyone predict? Can anyone predict what should be the execution time of this for loop?
10 seconds, more than 10.
Little more than 10
10
seconds.
seconds, because in this case we are not executing the task concurrently, right? So in this case it is going to take little more than 10 seconds. See, credit card processed 0 1 2 3, and you can see now the execution is or the credit card processed is sequentially, right? You can see little more than 10 seconds it is taking to process the credit card. Is that clear?
So ultimately, is the await keyword responsible to process or to
See,
return
await
the
keyword
task?
means what? Once this method execution completed, then only you can do the rest of the things. Right? So once this method processed, right? That await means what? Whatever the method return, that return data it is going to return. If you remove the await keyword means what? This method is not processing, right? Then what is the return type of the method? Task of string that is going to be returned, right? If you use the await keyword, then what data this method is returning inside the body? Inside the body, it is returning message. What is the type of the message? String. That string will be stored here, right? For example, if you prove, okay, in this case, now if I run the application, what string message we are returning from that method, right? That is going to be stored inside this response variable. Taking some time, and you can see that message, credit card number, this is processed, right? Now, if I'm removing this await keyword here, right? Now, if I'm removing the await keyword here, then what will happen? Right? So in this case, what will happen? So in this case, it is not waiting. It is not going to process the method immediately. See, in this case, what it is returning? It is returning ID, status, method, result, right? Everything is going to be content, right? So in this case, it is not directly returning the response. It is returning a task of a string. And in this case, if you are not using await, it is returning a task of string. And if you are using await, then it is going to return the result only, what is written by the method. Right? Clear?
Yeah.
Okay. So we have seen execution without and execution with. Right? So now we are going to discuss one important concept, offloading the current threads. Now let us try to understand what do you mean by offloading the current thread, right? Suppose now in our examples, instead of 1,000 credit card, right? Instead, okay, let me first put that things. Right? In this case, this is fine, right? Your up, see, coming to your output part, that is what I'm going to discuss. No, don't worry. Today I'm going to cover, right? So what is now I'm going to do? Instead of a 10 credit card, so what I'm trying to do, I'm creating 1,000 credit, 1 lakh credit card. If I'm using 1 lakh credit card, that means what? Now this for loop, what I'm using here, it is going to take more time, right? So initial, okay, let me divide this number by 1,000 so that you will get the time in second, right? Seconds, right? So in this case, right? So one simple changes I have done. What is the changes? Instead of 10, I'm using 1 million, right? Now what will happen? Now the execution is going to take more than 10 seconds. Why? Now I'm sure this method execution, right? This process task method is going to take 1 second. But while I'm using this for loop, right, to generate a 1 lakh credit card, so this for loop is going to run for 1 lakh time, right? So this for loop is going to run 1 lakh time, and for that, what I'm trying to do, I'm using the timer in my main method also, right? I'm using the timer inside my main method also. So you can see the main method, I start the timer inside my main method. I call this generate credit card method to generate to 1 lakh credit card, right? I'm printing the count, then I'm calling this process credit card method, then main thread execution completed, and then I'm printing the main thread execution time, right? So in this case, if you look at the application, right? Let me run the application. Okay, do one thing. This is useless. I have to comment this one. See how many seconds the main thread sit ideal. And now you can see the main thread execution taking more than 9 seconds. It is not because of this one, right? Not because of this when all method. Why? Because when it is executing the multiple tasks, we are using await operator. Means what? Now it will release the main thread. That main thread is going to do this execution, right? The main thread is going to complete, and whatever statement we have written that are going to be executed when all the tasks are processing. But in this case, why it is taking 9 seconds, more than 9 seconds? It's because of this for loop. This for loop is executing for 1 million times. That means this for loop is going to take more than 9 seconds. I want to avoid this. I do not want this for loop, right, to be executed by the main thread. I want to upload the main thread work, right? I want to upload this work to a different thread. I don't want to execute this for loop by using my main thread. Rather than I want this for loop to be executed by a different thread, so that at that time, my main thread is going to do other tasks. Clear? Guys, what is the problem? You understand? See, in this
Nope.
case, right? So in this case, this for loop will execute one day, which will take some times, right? So about 9 seconds in our case. When all are wait here, then only main thread active. Doing something wrong. One minute. Okay. So in this case, what I can do is I can upload this task to a different thread, right? How? Not task dot run. I'm going to use lambda expressions. And here, as it is a task, I can use the await operator. Oh, this is not an async method. So no, you cannot do the changes here. right? So this is not an async method. You cannot use await operator. So this for loop actually not taking more time. This for loop is actually taking time, right? This for each loop is actually taking time. So my mistake. I have explained this for loop, but this is not taking time. This for loop is going to take the time. Okay. To prove this, what I can do is I can write one console.readline statement. Process credit card started. Process credit card started, right? So process credit card started means you will see this will not take time, and immediately this process credit card is going to be start. See, process credit card generate 1 lakh, process credit card started. After the process credit card method started, it is taking time, right? So when the main thread is going to be completed, when this when the main thread is going to resume its task, when you call this await method, right? So in this case, this the number of a credit card you are adding to this collection now. So this is going to take more than 9 seconds. And in this case, what will happen now when you use the await keyword, then only the main thread is going to be released, and the main thread is going to do the rest its own task, right? Whatever statement you have written, those things are going to be executed. So in this example, right, the main thread is released when you or when the line number 70 is executed. Is that clear? When the line number 70 is executed, the main thread is going to be released, and the main thread is going to execute its other statement, right? Whatever they are, right? So in this example, right, this method is not going to take time. The execution time is going to be more in this case, because in this case, it is sequentially executing this process card, and it is sequentially storing the response inside this variable, right? So what is our intention? So I don't want my main thread to execute this for loop, for each loop, right? Rather, this for each loop should be executed by a different thread, right? And if you want to upload the work of main thread to a different thread, right? Upload the work of main thread to different thread, then what you need to use? You need to use some task.run method, right? So if I'm using task, if I'm using the run method, right? And to this run method, I need to pass one lambda expression, and you know how to pass lambda expression. This is nothing but my lambda expression, and within this lambda expression, I need to put my for loop, right? I need to put my for loop, and then what I'm trying to do is I'm going to use await keyword here, right? This is the thing that you need to do, right? So now what will happen, right? So you understand what is this, what I'm trying to do? I'm using lambda expression, and using lambda expression, I'm executing the for loop. And to this run method, I'm passing the delegate. Lambda expression means this is nothing but one delegate, right? I'm passing one delegate to this run method, right? If you go to the definition of run method, it is taking one action delegate. And if you go to the definition, then you will see it's an delegate, right? So I'm passing one delegate, or you can say, in this case, I'm passing the delegate in the form of a lambda expression. So this is parenthesis, angular, this is lambda expression operator, and this is open and close curly braces, and within the open and close curly braces, I have put my for each loop. Now what will happen? Now you have used the await operator. How you can use the await operator? Because this run method is an asynchronous method, right? So what is this method returning? Task, right? So task means it is an asynchronous method, right? As it is an asynchronous method, you can use the await keyword. Now you tell me, if I'm using the await keyword, right? Then if this for loop execution is going to take 10 seconds or 5 seconds, does your main thread will be blocked for 5 seconds?
No.
So in this statement, what will happen, right? Your main thread will be released, and your main thread is going to do its own task, right? So in this case, your main thread is not going to be blocked. Your main thread is not going to be blocked for 9 seconds. Immediately, you will see the main thread is going to do its task, right? Even though the execution time is not improving, then what is exactly improving in this case? The main thread is not going to be blocked. Other statement in the application, it is going to be executed. Now run the application, and you can see the waiting time of main thread is not there. So how many seconds the main thread takes? 0.1 second. Previously, how much time it took? More than 9 seconds, right? So you can upload the tasks, right? Suppose one thread is executing, right? If you do not want that thread to block, right? And in that case, you can upload the work of a particular thread by using this task.run method. And to this task.run method, whatever statement you want to execute, you can pass that as part of your delegate, right? And you simply need to call the await keyword, and once you call the await keyword, right, then this things is going to be executed by a different thread now, right? This task.run method, it's actually going to create a different thread which is going to execute your application, right? Queue is the specified work to run on the thread pool, right? So what it means now, it is not going to use the main thread, rather it is going to use the thread pool threads to run the code, right? So in this case, whatever code you have written here, right, this code is going to be executed by the thread pool threads, which is a different thread than your main thread. Main thread is released, and this application, this code, whatever you have written, is going to be used or is going to be executed by a different thread. Clear?
So one doubt here.
Yes.
So this task.run will make run all the like, can we put any part of the code in this run method to
Any part
execute?
means what?
Suppose in this case you have put for each. So like, can we put any looping
See what I'm saying. This is a block. This is started and this is ended. Anything you want, you can do here. It's not related to for each loop. Anything you want to process by a different thread, you can put the logic here. Here the logic in our case, the logic is a for each loop, which is a time consuming loop, right? So for that purpose, I'm putting that logic inside this run method.
So any time consuming loops we can put it here and we can avoid that.
Why you are considering the loop? Why you are considering loop? I'm saying the logic. Logic means anything. Anything means what? Any time consuming operation, right? If you want upload means what? Upload means you do not want to execute that task by using your main thread. If you want to execute that task by using a different thread, right? Then in that case, you have to use that await keyword and you have to use task.run. Upload means what? In this case, see, in this case, this when.all means what? The main thread is released and this task is going to be executed by a different thread. In this case, the same thing is also happening, right? The main thread is released and this logic, what you have written, is going to be executed by a different thread. Clear? Guys, clear? Guys?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir, it's clear.
Right? So basically task.run means what? Now, if I'm not using task.run, simply I'm having a for loop here, right? Simple for loop, right? Then this was, say, forget about this for loop. Now, whatever statement, line number 59 to 62, these statement are going to be executed by which thread?
Main thread.
Main thread. And if I'm using this for loop here, right? If I'm using this for each loop here, then also this for loop is going to be executed by main thread or not?
Yes.
And as it is a time consuming loop, right? So that means your main thread will also be going to be, the main thread is going to be execute as this main thread is executing, right? That means that number of time your this application code, what you have written, right? That is also going to be blocked. Yes or no? Until and unless these things are not completed, you cannot execute these things, right? So what is my intention is, I don't want to block the main thread, right? What my intention is, I want to upload the main thread work. Upload the main thread work means what? Now I don't want to execute this for statement by using my main thread. Rather, I will create a different thread, nothing but the thread pool threads. I want thread pool threads to execute those code, right? For that purpose, what I'm using task.run. Even though if you use task.run, right, the main thread is only going to be released when you use the await keyword in this scenario, right? So for that purpose, I'm using the await keyword, and await keyword will make sure two things. First thing is what? Now it will release the main thread, and the second thing is that until and unless this statement is not completed, it will not continue the execution of the next statement. Is that clear? Guys,
Yes,
clear
so
or
you
no?
use the
Sorry?
So
Yes.
like await is making this all the suppose in this task.run whatever the code piece we are putting, so it is suppose if assuming that it is taking time and we are putting in this task.run, so will this make
Two things. Whether it is taking time or not, that doesn't matter. If you are using await keyword means your thread is released. How much time the thread is going to release, that basically depends on the time that the task is going to be completed, right? If the task is completed in 5 seconds, the await means it is going to release the thread, right? The thread can do other task, and after 5 seconds, again a new thread will the same thread, right, is going to come and execute the task, right? And await is basically to ensure the main thread or the thread which is running this application code is going to be released. That is one thing. Second thing, the await will ensure that once this task what is executing here, once the task is completed, right, then I can proceed for the next statement. I cannot give guarantee how much time this task is going. So await is not basically meant for the time duration this method is going to be executed, right? So he doesn't know whether the task is going to be completed in a 1 second or 5 seconds or 10 seconds, right? What he ensure that how much seconds the task is going to take, that is I don't care. What I care, I need to release the main thread. And what other thing I care, now once the task is completed, then only I can go and execute the rest statement. Then I will allow the main thread to execute the rest statement. It might be possible that you have simply written a single statement which is not taking time. That is fine. It might be possible that you can return a statement which is taking more time, right? If it is not taking more time, if immediately that statement is executed, then why should I go with task.run? Try to understand. Na? If why I'm not putting this statement inside it task.run, because I know this statement is not taking time, immediately it is going to execute. Then why should I put this? I need to put the things inside this run method which is going to take time. Even though if you want, you can put these things, right? Now you can see what I'm trying to do is I'm putting this thing inside this method. That is fine. There is no issue, right? So in this case, you can see process credit card started here. I have written, right? Now run the application. It is not only that you can put loop or you can put for each loop, right? So you can see I have put this statement here. So once before executing this method, right, the main thread is released, and once the main thread is released, you can see main thread execution time is this one. And after this, the statement what you have written inside this is going to be executed by a different thread, right? So basically what it means, now you have to upload the task of your main thread, right? You do not want something to execute by the main thread. You want to release the main thread so that the main thread going to do a different task. Yes, you can do this. How? By using the task.run method. Clear? And it is not mandatory. You can put only a high consuming task, right? You can also put in some normal statement by using a different thread, right? But this doesn't make any sense. Why? Because if you are putting this thing inside this run method, right, a normal statement and in between these two things, right, this statement will be executed faster comparing to this one. Why? Because in this case it will go to the thread pool, it will pick one of the thread pool thread, then it is going to execute this statement. After executing this statement, again it will put that thread into the thread pool tag. The additional activity which is happening in this case is going to be take some time, but those things is not happening here. But that additional thing, even though happening in this case, it makes sense. Why? Now this additional things is happening for the one time, but this loop is going to be executed for multiple times, right? Multiple times, meaning the time which is taken by the threadful things is very less as compared to the time which is going to be executed by this collection of a credit card. So by considering those scenarios and conditions, right, you have to decide whether I need to upload the main thread work or not. Is it really makes sense to upload the main thread task right to a different thread or not? In this case, this doesn't really make sense, right? So you should not do these things, right? But it really makes sense. Clear, guys?
So the task.run will release the main thread and it will run this part in background so that
Yes, not background. It is going to use the foreground threads only, but those threads are coming from the thread pool.
oh,
Right. So we have one concept called a thread pool, you know, right?
yes.
Right. Those thread pool threads will come into the picture. Okay. So we are going to continue our example with the same example, right? We are going to continue, right? How to limit the number of concurrent tasks in Shisha, right? Concurrent task in this case, you can see I'm executing this for loop, right? And here, right? Here, I don't know how many tasks are going to be executed concurrently. 5 tasks, 10 tasks, 20 tasks, 30 tasks, 50 tasks, right? Based on the number of threads available, right? Based on the core and the CPU processor, right? The number of tasks are going to be concurrent simultaneously, right? Now, I want to limit this one, right? So guys, tell me. So in our multi-threading, we have discussed few concepts, right? In multi-threading, we have discussed a few concepts. Mutex, monitor, semaphore slim, right? So using mutex and monitors, how many internal thread you can allow your maximum? Using mutex and a monitor, how many threads can access the critical section at the same time?
Only one
Only
thread.
one.
One, maximum one, right? And using semaphore slim,
How many we set?
right? So that means we can set if you want three threads to execute, I mean the critical section, right? At the same time, then I can set the its value to 3. If you want 5, then you can set the 5, right? The same concept I'm going to discuss here, right? So how to limit the number of a concurrent thread to access your task means you have to use semaphore slim. If you want more control over the number of internal threads, right, that can access our application code, then you need to use semaphore slim, right? So in this example, right, in this example, what is happening? Let me copy these things. Right. So this is the example you have discussed. This is card number. This is name. I'm generating credit card. I'm processing credit card. I have commented the statement which is going to print the credit card processed, right? And here I'm using start and stopwatch, and I'm using the await operator for this for each loop, and then I'm using when all tasks are completed, right? So in this case, what I'm passing 1 lakh and 1 lakh to this method. And this method means this process card is going to process, right, this 1 lakh credit card at the same time, right? So this is what we have discussed. This example we have discussed so far, right? Now let me run the application, right? This is going to be main thread execution time, right? We have uploaded the work of main thread, so it is completed in some milliseconds, right? And the when that task.WhenAll method, it is going to take some around 10 seconds or 11 seconds, because we are processing a huge amount, right? 1 lakh, right? So you can say it is taking 15 milliseconds. 15 seconds to process those cards, right? That is acceptable because we are processing 1 lakh, right? There is a problem. Here we have a processed 1 lakh tasks simultaneously. But there might be problem when when we execute a huge number of tasks simultaneously, right? For example, so suppose in this case we are just executing this statement here, right? We are just executing this statement here. It might be possible that instead of this process card method, you are calling one HTTP, you are calling one web service, right? Using some HTTP client, you are calling some web server or web services. And those web services is different in a different web server, right? And if at a time, if you are sending 1 lakh request to the web server, right, then it might be possible that the server might be down, right? If he is unable to handle such a huge request, then the server might be blocked or server might be down, right? So it's possible that right, so the server might be blocked or server might be down. So we need to handle these things, right? It should not be the case that at a time, right, 1 lakh requests are going to the same server, right? There is a concept called right, what I can say, I just forgot that term exactly. Load balancer, right? There is something called a load balancer which will come into the picture, right? Then that load balancer will balance the number of HTTP requests that can processed by the server. If you are sending 1 lakh requests to the server, right? Before hitting the server, before the server, right? There is something called a load balancer, right? And based on the balance, right, the load balancer will take or will handle those things, right? Anyone heard the term load balancer?
Yes.
Right?
Yes, sir.
Right, so basically for that particular scenario we are using load balancer to balance the workload, right? It should not be like I'm sending 1 lakh HTTP request and all the 1 lakh HTTP or 1 million request, right, going to be processed by the server. If a 1 lakh request is received by the server, it might be possible sometimes you can see your server utilization is CPU utilization is 90%, right? Memory utilization is at the higher end. Why? Because see, and at that time you can observe when the server utilization at the peak or a memory utilization at the peak, right? If you send a request, right, the response you will get is unexpected. Means what? Now, if generally the response you get in 3 seconds, at that time it might be possible that you will get the response in 60 seconds, in 2 minutes or 3 minutes. Why? Because the server is unable to handle such a high request, right? So we should handle this, right? For that particular purpose, from the server side, you can use load balancer. Even from your application, you can manage this. So what, how you can manage this? So instead of sending 1 lakh request at a time, we need to create a batch, right? Batch means what? Now, if you want to send 1 lakh, instead of 1 lakh, I want to send maximum 20,000 requests per batch. And in that case, it will create 5 batches. And in batches, right, that is going to process the 1 lakh request. And for that, what we need to use? Semaphore slim. And in Semaphore slim, you need to set the number of threads, right? The number of tasks that can be executed concurrently. You have to set 20,000. That means 20,000 tasks is going to be concurrent, will be executed concurrently. Understand? Guys?
Yes, yes.
Right. So what we are going to do, we are not going to process 1 lakh credit card, right? So what we are going to do to give you a very good picture, what I'm trying to do is I'm going to process 15 credit cards. I will set the semaphore slim value to 3 so that it will create batches, 5 batches, and in each batch it is going to execute 3 tasks. Is that clear? Clear or not?
Yes.
Right, so I'm not going to show you 1000 because I want to show you the output, right? For that purpose, I'm using this 15. I'm going to create 15 credit card and I'm going to execute 3 credit card at a time, right? That means I'm going to execute 3 tasks concurrently, and 3 tasks means if you 15 credit card, then it means 5 batches are there to execute all the credit card. And for that, I'm going to use semaphore slim, right? So if anybody new Semaphore Slim, I have written one article on Semaphore Slim. They can visit and they can get the information, right? Even we have already discussed the Semaphore Slim class. in our previous sessions, right? Just go, right? So first of all, what you need to do is you need to create an instance of a semaphore slip class. Let me create an instance of this one, right? So where I'm using this in process credit card. So I'm creating an instance of a semaphore slip, right? And semaphore slip means in which namespace it belongs to? System dot which namespace? System dot threading namespace. So you have to bring that namespace, right? So I'm creating a semaphore slim object and I'm setting the initial count as 3. That means what? Maximum 3 threads can execute the task, right? So once you create the semaphore slim class, right? Next we need to convert this code, right? So in this case, you can see it is processing all the credit card at once, right? So I don't want this. I want 3 credit cards to be processed. And for that purpose, I need to change this task.run method, what I have written, to use this one. So what exactly I'm doing here, I'm selecting the credit card that select, this is the LinQ query. And here I'm using the async method and I'm processing the card one by one. And here I'm using the semaphore slim method, right? And this semaphore slim method will wait until if the maximum is reached, and then it is going to process the code, right? Let me copy the code and then I will explain this thing in detail. Okay. See, so this select method means it belongs to LinQ, right? LinQ namespace. So first of all, you need to include that namespace using system.linq, right? So once you use system.linq, so I am getting this error, right? Well, can anybody tell me why I'm getting this error?
Does it return a task? Does a semaphore return a task?
No, why I'm getting this error? So this is a static block or non-static block? This method is a static method or non-static method?
Static.
And this semaphore slim variable what I have created, right? This is an object, right? So this is a static or non-static?
Non-static.
Non-static.
So can you access non-static member directly from a static block?
No, you need an instance.
No.
You need instance. And how I can make this to be accessible? By making this as static, right? Now the error is gone. Clear? So this credit card means it contains 1 lakh records, and from the select method, I'm accessing one by one credit card. This card means it will this card will refer to the element of this credit card collection, right? So this credit card means it is having credit card. This credit card what I'm accessing by using one lambda expression, right? And in this case, it will access this card will refer to each element of this credit card. So basically this select operation saying select card from credit card. Clear? Select card from credit card. And here credit card, you can consider it's a table. Table means what? Collection of record. And in this case, how many records are there in this collection? 15 records. So I'm going to select 15 records, right? 15 credit card from this table. Clear? What is this statement is all about? Right? And I want to perform an asynchronous operation, so I'm going to use asynchronous lambda expression, right? If you are removing this async, then it is going to be a synchronous lambda expression, and if I'm using async, then it is going to be a asynchronous lambda expression, right? So you can see, so what this select method is going to do, project each element of a sequence into a new form. So in this case, it will project each element of this collection into this card, right? And what this card is going to contain? A credit card. Simply, if you are having a table, right? Table having 10 rows, right? Then if you write select star, suppose table name is employee, and if you write select star from employee, then it is going to represent all the employees. It is going to fetch all the employees or not?
Yes.
So similarly, consider this is your employee table, and you are accessing the employees, and this is nothing but your select statement. Select a star from employee. This card you can consider star from employee. So select a card from credit card. So whatever credit card information you have, those are going to be accessed by this card variable. Similarly, if you are using for each loop, right? If you are using for each loop, right? So if you are using for each loop, so in this case, what will happen? Now, the number of elements you have inside this collection, you can access one by using this item variable or not.
Yes.
So similarly, the number of a credit card that you have inside this credit card collection, you can access one by using this card property. So this card, it is nothing but it's going to be your credit card. You can see what is the type?
Credit card.
That means if the credit card contains 15 elements, those 15 elements you can asynchronously, right, by using this card, right? So now this card contains the credit card data, right? Now what I'm doing, this the following statement, this semaphore slim dot wait async, right? This will tell if we have more than 3 tasks are running, we are going to wait, and we are going to wait until the semaphore gets released, right? So in this case, initially, so what you will do, you will process 3 tasks, right? Once the 4th task come into the picture, then that task will have to wait. Why? 4th task is going to be wait because we are using semaphore slim.wait async, right? There is a wait version is available, but as we are implementing asynchronous programming, so we are going to use the wait async. And semaphore slim means we have specified the count as 3, right? So in this case, even though you are having 15 credit card, 3 will be processed concurrently, and rest of the things will be there in the waiting mode. And how long they are going to be wait? As long as any of the semaphore object is released, right? Then in the try method, what I'm doing, I'm calling this process card method by using the await keyword, right? And I'm simply returning, right? Now this process card will execute how many records? 3 records. And after 3 records, again a batch of 3 will be executed. And after executing this thing, and finally I'm going to release the semaphore. Once I release the semaphore, right? So first time 3 records are going to be processed by this credit card. Once the 3 records are processed, then I'm releasing the semaphore step. I'm releasing means another 3 records are going to be processed by the by the process card, right? So in this way, it is going to process the 15 credit card by in 5 parts, and each part, right, in 5 batches, and in each batch 3 tasks are going to be executed, right? So in this case, you can see need to use await operator here, or we are using asynchronous wait async. Why I'm going to use await operator? Because I need to make sure that the process card execution completed, right? The 3 records, the 3 are completed, then I'm going to use await, right? So in this case, you can see, and once you have the task, then you need to provide that to WhenAll method. And now the WhenAll method is going to process the record as a batch of 3, right? Now, if you, and the rest of the code is same. Now, if you run the application, right? Now you will see that a batch of 3 is going to be processed. So 1 lakh credit card generated. Main thread execution is this one. What happened? Anything wrong in this statement? Let me copy these things. Why it is not printing? Okay, let me copy the code once more. Right. Allow maximum 3 tasks. This is my for loop generate card. This is my process card async method, right? And here I'm processing the task asynchronously, and this is when all method, right? So let me run this application once more. Oh shit. I have to pass 15 here. Right, so this is the issue. So I have passed 1 lakh. This is the reason why I'm not getting the output. So I have to pass 15. So now run the application. You can see main thread execution time is 0. Credit card generated is 15. Processing 15 credit card done in 5.14 seconds. Why I'm not getting that output? Because I have not commented this one. Let me uncomment this one. Right. Now let me run the application once more. See, 3. So as a batch of 3 credit card are processed or not? Right? Understand or
Yes.
not? So this is how you can use, you can limit the number of concurrent tasks that you want to execute. So you have to remember this syntax, the collection, you have to use the select keyword, then you have to use the asynchronous, then you have to use the semaphore slim wait async method, so that if more than 3 tasks trying to execute, they have to wait. And how long they are wait? Till you release the semaphore. And how to release the semaphore? We have already discussed this release method. And inside the try method, you have to call the process card method, right? And finally, it is going to return me this task, right? And that task we need to pass to this when all method. And this when all method will make sure all the tasks are going to be executed, right? But the tasks are going to be executed as a batch of 3, and it will depend upon the number of a credit card. If 15, then 5 batches. If 30, then it is going to make 10 batches, right? So in this way, now you can check that the server should be in a balanced condition, right? There should not be a heavy load on the server. Is that clear, guys?
Sir, if we debug this and we can check.
Say debug in the sense asynchronous thing now. So you cannot debug this. So if you try to debug, then you will not get the appropriate data. So what exactly you want to debug? Which thing? You cannot debug this select statement.
Yeah, inside this task, how it is
You
happening.
cannot debug this select statement. It is not a sequential execution. You can check one by one. It is asynchronous. Asynchronous thing you cannot debug.
Okay.
Right? If you try, see what happens. I'm debugging the application, right? So this statement is there. I'm typing F10. See, this F10 means whole code is there. The whole code is selected. And how you can debug this, right? Once I press F10, it will go to the next step. Right, so this is not a single statement, right? If you are trying to debug, the whole thing is going to be selected. If it is in this case, what happened? And this is a single statement. This is a single statement, right? But in this case, this is not a single statement. Inside this select method, you have written one statement, some try catch finally, and you have written another step. This thing you cannot debug.
So for async operations, there is no any means of debugging at all. Like, can't we see anything?
How you can debug? So async means what? You want to perform multiple tasks, right? So suppose in this case, I'm calling the when all method and I'm using await. In that case, this when all method is internally executing and the main thread is also going to do these things internally. Then how you can debug? And in
Suppose
this case,
if
and in
something going wrong, then how can we check in async methods?
so if something going wrong, then see, in this case, most of the thing you are going to use inbuilt method, right? So in this case, this is the when all method, right? This when all method is the source code of this method is available to you.
No.
Then how you can debug that method?
No, suppose like if we done any mistake in the logic and we are not getting the expected out. So in that case,
Suppose you are running one application, right? Then if something, some runtime or error occur, then you can handle that exception, na? From that exception, you will see whether what going wrong and what going right. In our last session, yesterday only, I have shown you those things. If something goes wrong, right? If you mismatch, right? Suppose you are hitting one API and you have provided a wrong URL, then in that case, you will get 404 not found exception. And if you should know what to mean by 404 not found, right? Yesterday session you attend or not?
Yes.
So in yesterday session only, I have discussed how to handle the exception. Yes or no?
Yes, sir, I got that. But like, if we want to intend to
See,
see how
intent means, see, here two things are happening. So first of all, why you are going to use async? Can you tell me why I'm going to use asynchronous programming?
to process the multiple things at the same time, multiple requests.
I think you are wrong. So multiple things are not at the same time. I need to go for asynchronous programming when I need to communicate with the external system. Yes or no?
Yeah, I
So
will bond.
external system, if I want to communicate with the external system, then I need to use asynchronous programming. This is the first point that you should remember, right? So what is happening in the external system, whether they have written the code properly or that or something wrong or right? Can you debug? Suppose you
Uh,
are using payment gateway API. You are using payment gateway API. If there is some issue in the
No, you
payment
can
gateway
debug
API,
somebody else's system, so.
right? If you are using the payment gateway API and in the payment gateway API is developed and provided by some other companies, right? Let's assume that payment gateway is provided by BillDesk, right? Payment gateway is provided by BillDesk, right? If there is some issue in their API, then how you will debug their issue? Can you debug their API from your application?
no, sir, but we can also use async programming in our existing application, or to do some of the operation on the database. Can't we use?
In this case, see, you are going in the wrong direction. So in this case, this process card method for our simplicity we have written here. For our simplicity we have written here. But in real time, this process card method is not here. It might be this process card method means it's a API which is provided by some other application of your right, some other application, and that API we need to call here. Right? I'm not using that HTTP request or API. For that simplicity purpose, I have written this method here. But don't consider that this process card method is going to be available in your application code. And if you want to debug this application code, you can simply debug now by calling this method independently. Why I'm going to use multiple tasks? I can simply execute this method. I can simply call this method and I can simply debug this. And for that purpose, unit testing is there. You know something called unit testing? Anybody having any idea? X unit, J unit, any idea?
N unit.
Right? Why you are using unit testing? To check and verify whether the code or whether the method, whatever we have written, is performing, is giving us the output as expected or not. In this case, right? In this case, what you want to debug? You want to debug this process card method, yes or no? So what we have written here is only for this process card method or anything else,
Yes.
Yes, sir.
right? And if you want to check whether this process card method performing fine or not, I don't require this task and all these things. I can simply call this method independently. And I can check with the line by line. For example, okay, let me show you that also. So for example, I'm commenting all these things, right? I'm commenting all these things. Let me stop the debugger, right? I'm commenting all these things. If you want to check whether this is working fine or not, so what you can do is you can use a for each loop, right? And sorry, not here, right? So you can use a for each loop here, right? And to the loop, you have to provide these things. And here you can response variable response equals to you have to call that the process card method, right? You have to call that process card method, right? And here you have to use what,
Wait.
right? Why I'm getting the error? Yes, you have to pass the item, right? So in this case, you can put a debugger here, right? And you need to run the application, right? Now you can debug this thing and you need to check whether the method is working fine or not. You understood? But generally, this code you will not find in your application. It should be somewhere else. From the day one, I'm saying again and again, right? If you are communicating with external system, then you need to use asynchronous program. Right? For internal application, you can go with parallel programming. Right? What is parallel programming? I will discuss, right? But not now. Clear? How to debug, right? So in this case, you cannot simply debug this thing, right? Because this is not a single statement or anything, right? But if you want, you can check the statement like this, and then you need to convert that to a task like this. Clear? Right? So, and here, I do not know what are the threads because I'm not creating the threads internal manually, right? So that I can go to the tools and Windows debug and the thread. I can select this thread. I want to debug. This thing is not available because this is not multi-threading, right? The same thread is going to perform different tasks. The same thread is executing this process card method. The same thread is executing this method. The same thread is also executing this method. The same thread is also going to execute this method, right? So this is how you can limit the number of concurrent tasks that your application can execute, right? So in this statement, I have to uncomment this code so that you can see the output. And I have changed this to 15, right? So that is fine. Now, how to handle the response when executing multiple tasks, right? So as of now, we have discussed, right? What we have discussed? We have discussed how to execute multiple tasks. So in this case, you can say if a single in this case, see in this case, if it's a single call, right? If a single task executed, you can directly get the response inside this response variable, right? Right. Let me run this F10. Right. So you can see the response is stored inside this variable. But the problem is how you will handle where the response when you are executing the task using the task.WhenAll method. Task.WhenAll means what? The multiple tasks are executed concurrently. If multiple tasks are executed concurrently, then how you will handle the response? That is what you need to understand. Okay, let me copy this code. Right. So now so when you will get the response when you call these things and when these things are completed, right? When all method complete all the tasks, then you will get the response. Now move your mouse pointer over this await keyword. What is the return type?
String. Array of string.
Array of a string, right? If it's a single method, right? Previously I have shown you, if it's a single process, if you are calling this process card method independently, then at that time you will get the response as a string. But in this case, this task means multiple tasks are executed, means multiple string you will get as a response. For that purpose, it is returning string array, right? So what you need to do, you need to create a string array. Right? So in this case, this is nothing but it is going to be your string array. Yes or no? Now if you want, right, as it's an array, right? So what you can do, you can look through this collection or not. You can look through this array or not. And once you look through this array, right, then you can write this test statement. right? Now you can handle the response. So instead of printing these things, right? Okay, let me do this thing also, both things. Okay, now let me run the application. So a batch of 3 executed, right? And you can see after then you are getting the response, right? And you are handling the response. What are the credit card and all these things. Clear how to handle the response, guys?
Yes, sir.
Right.
Sir, I have one doubt. In this, um, can you scroll up? So here in try block, we have keep this await process card so that here we will get only the string instead
No,
of
no,
task
no,
of.
no, no, no. In this case, it is not going to be executed, right? In this case, this is just creating the projecting the statement, right? How the statement are going to be executed, right? That is going to be projected by the select statement. And when you call this final method, right? At that time, the method is actually going to be executed. And
If I
here,
remove that await, it will be task of string. So
no,
again here.
see, here we are using the select statement and we are projecting the asynchronous version. As we are using the asynchronous version, so we are going to use the await keyword, right? So we are going to use the asynchronous version. For that purpose, we are using await keyword. But in this case, right? In this case, nothing is going to be happening. It is just see what is this statement select saying? It is just projecting, right? Project each element of a sequence into a new form, right? Means what? It is just creating the statement that you want to execute later, right? Those statements are created here, and when you call this when all task, right? At that time, the method are actually going to be executed.
If I remove that await inside the try.
So if you remove, what will happen? See, you cannot do this now because it is an asynchronous operation, right? You are using an asynchronous lambda expression. So you should not remove those things. Sir. Asynchronous means you have to use the await keyword, right? If asynchronous means this method should be async method, right? Here you can say I'm using wait async, right? But in our previous example, what method we have used?
Yeah, in multi-threading we used only wait.
Wait method. Why at the time why I'm not using async wait async? Because at that time that is no, we have not discussed about asynchronous programming. But if you go to the definition of wait method, right? Apart from wait, you can see there is something called wait async, and this asynchronous method is basically used asynchronously to wait enter the semaphore slip, right? So for that purpose, I'm using wait async, right? This is the asynchronous version of the wait method. So as you are using asynchronous lambda expression here, everything needs to be asynchronous. And asynchronous means you have to use await operator here and await operator here. And in this case, await operator is not required because we are simply releasing the semaphore. Right? Clear?
Okay, sir. Yes, sir.
Right? So in this case, you can see I'm getting the response as a string array and I'm processing this record response. But guys, whenever you are calling any API, right, some third-party API, in that case, that API going to return you the response in which format?
JSON.
JSON.
Right? JSON format. Then we need to understand in this case, instead of string, if the API going to return me JSON data, then how I will handle? That is what we need to understand or not? Yes or no? So in my application, I'm using this task of string and returning the string data. But sometimes it might be possible that not sometimes always, right? 900% time, whenever you are calling any API, right? You will get the data in JSON format. Then how you will handle that, right? That is what we need to understand. Let me copy this code and then I will explain you the things. Right? This is the same code as the previous example, except here I'm creating a different class. Here I'm using credit card response class, and this response, right, this class, I'm going to response from my process card method. right? So here I'm creating a credit card number, name, and each processed, right? So what I have done is I'm going to return a response, right? And suppose you are passing 10 credit card, you pass me, you give me 10 credit card to process the credit card. Out of 10 credit card, how many credit card are processed successfully and how many credit card are get failed? All these things I'm going to return. So in this class, credit card number, name, whatever you are passing, that will be stored here. And this property, you can see it's a Boolean property. If this credit card processed successfully, then this property is going to be true. And if the credit card processed failed, right, then in that case, this each processed property is going to return me false. So now from the process card method, instead of returning a string value, what I'm going to return, I'm going to return a JSON string, and that JSON string, right, that JSON object is going to contain these three information. Clear? How to create a JSON string, how to return, that I will explain. But what the JSON string content means these three properties. This is the key, and what is the associated value. Name is going to be key, and what is its associated value. Each process is the key and the associated value. That is what we are going to return as a JSON string, right? And now, so as this is the thing, and as this credit card we want to return, right? That means from the process card method, we want to change the data, right? So in previously, we have created a string, right? So in the previous example, if you look at the example, then the process card method, right? You can see I'm just writing this statement. Previously, I have written these three statements, right? Previously, I have written these three statements, right? But now this await dot task delay, that is fine. But now I'm not creating a string message. What I'm creating an object of credit card response, right? So you can use var or credit card response. And within that card number, whatever the input I am receiving within this credit card, that card number I'm putting here. Whatever the name I'm receiving, that name I'm storing in the name property. And if you remember, card number and name, apart from that, each process is there. And what logic I have written? Now I have written some hard-coded logic, and that hard-coded logic is basically to decide whether the card is processed or rejected, right? So what logic I have written? Now whatever the credit card number, if it is modulus division by 2, right, and if the remainder is going to be 0, then I need to return true, and if it is not 0, then I need to return false. So this is the logic I have written. But in your case, right, once it processed, right, then actual data you will have, whether the card is processed or not. But in this case, I have just written the hard-coded logic. And this logic, you can see, if the number is modulus division by 2, it is going to be 0, else it is going to be false. Clear? And this is the credit card object we created. This is, but if you see, this is not the JSON object. This is not the JSON object. Then how to create the JSON object? For that, what we need to use, we need to use some tool, right? So if you see, I have installed the Newtonsoft data.json. This is a DLL which I have downloaded from NuGet Package Manager. How to download? So just you need to select the tools, go to NuGet Package Manager console. From there, select Manage NuGet Package for Solution. Click on this, right? Go to Browse and search for Newtonsoft.json, right? Right, Newton's. What is the name? Newtonsoft.json or what? So in this case, you can see that it's not available here. Why? Because that is already installed my machine. So if you go to the installed section, right, then you can see.
So spelling correction.
This spelling, right?
Okay. What is the spelling?
NEWTON.
So NEWTON. So you can see this is the Newtonsoft JSON package, right? So if you select this and go to browser, right, so you can also search here Newtonsoft.json, right? So somewhere you will find Newtonsoft.json. This is the Newtonsoft JSON package, right? So you have to install it in newtonsoft.json, right? And I have already installed, right? So once you install this newtonsoft.json package, right, you can see that DLL in the reference folder. Somewhere you will find newtonsoft.json, right? Once you download the newtonsoft.json DLL, then you need to include the namespace, right? Once you include the namespace, then what you can do, there is a class called the serialized object and JSON convert, right? So inside this JSON convert class, you can see there are one method called serialized object. So there are many overloaded versions, serialized object, and one is deserialized object, right? Serialized object and a deserialized object. So what is the use of the serialized object? Means whatever you type, right, you will convert that type to a JSON string. You will convert that type to a JSON string. And what I'm returning, that JSON string is nothing but it's a normal string, but it will be in the form of a JSON object. And I'm simply returning that JSON string, right? For converting, I'm using serialized object. JSON convert the serialized object. Now when I receive the data, right, you can see in this case, I'm selecting the task, that is fine. And when I'm calling this method when all, here again, you can see I'm getting the string array as a response. But in this case, this string is nothing but it's a JSON array, right? So what I'm trying to do is I'm using a for each loop to loop through all the string, and each time I got the string, I am converting that string to a particular object, right? And for that, what I'm using JSON convert that deserialized object, right? And in this case, whatever string, right, I'm getting, right, I'm converting that string to this class, credit card response, right? And then I'm storing that response inside this variable, and I'm creating a collection of these types, and I'm storing that response inside that collection, right? And then what I'm trying to do, I'm selecting, I'm using here lambda expression, right? Lambda, or you can say linQ method, to filter out which records are processed and which records are not processed. And how? Now here where means this card is reflected to the element which are present inside this method, right? And if the card is processed, then it is going to return true. And if you are confusing what I have written here, right, to simplify this thing, what I can do is I can move these things to a different statement, right? So what I can do is processed card equals to this, right? Dot to list, right? And here processed cards, and here instead of using this one, I can write this one, right? And the same thing what I can do here, right? So same thing I can also do here. So here instead of a true, okay, I can pass here false, right? And processed held, right? So instead of using this one, I can write this one, right? To simplify these things, right? So in this case, what I'm doing, this credit card response, right? It is going to contain all the responses, whether the card is processed or whether the card is failed. Every response is going to be contained inside this collection, right? And then from this collection, we need to filter out. I need to filter out, I need to filter out all the color, all the card which are processed and all the card which are not processed, and right. And if I want to convert all the card which are processed, right, I have to provide the filter condition. This where is nothing but it is similar to the where clause what you have written in your select statement, right? Suppose you have a table, so select star from this table where is processed equals to false. If I am writing some statement like select star from employee where is permanent equals to true, then what it means? It is going to return me all the employees where the column is permanent is going to be true. So the same thing is also applicable here, right? I'm going to discuss this link to all these things again in detail. So select all the card, right? Select all the card from this collection where the each processed property is true, and that Again, you just need to convert that to two list. We have already discussed two list, two array, two dictionary. So whatever data it return, I just need to convert that to a list and storing the output inside this variable. And in this case, what I'm trying to do, I'm converting, I'm only fetching the response, right? Only fetching the record where this property is false. So in this case, this for loop is going to print all the credit card which are processed, and in this case, it is going to process all the credit card which are in this case which are passed, and in this case which are failed, right? And how we are getting the response? By using the JSON serialized object, deserialized object, right? So there are two methods basically you need to use. One is JSON convert dot serialized object. If you want to convert a .NET object into JSON object, and if you are having a JSON object and you want to convert back that JSON object to .NET object, and in that case you need to use deserialized object. And while using deserialized object, you need to specify the type, right? Or to what type you want to convert this response. I want to convert that response to this type, so I'm providing that here. Clear, guys?
Sir, one question, like, what is the main purpose of converting the .NET object to JSON object? Is it like lightweight, or is there any other purpose?
So first of all, tell me from the beginning, I'm saying again and again, right? So why you are using asynchronous programming?
To call the
External
live
Sorry, to call
APIs, external
API.
APIs.
Okay. The API is going to return the data in which format?
Okay, JSON format.
JSON format. So for that simplicity purpose, right? So for that purpose, what I'm trying to say you is, right? So I'm not creating the, I'm not calling the API in this example, right? This is the reason why instead of calling the API, which is return me the JSON object, I'm creating the JSON object manually here. And how you can create the JSON object manually? By calling this JSON convert dot serialized object. You have to call this credit card response, right? This object, right? This is the .NET object. You will convert that .NET object to JSON object, or you can say JSON string. And once the API you call, right? Consider when that all it is calling the API, and that API is returning me some JSON array, right? Some JSON string. Then I need to convert that JSON string to my .NET object, and for that purpose, I'm using deserialized object. Clear, guys? Any question from anyone? Guys,
No, sir.
right? Okay, fine. So now let run me the application, and you will get the output as expected. See, you can see 15 cards. These are the cards which are approved, and these are the cards which are rejected. Now, if you want to see what is the actual format of the JSON string, right? So you can just put a debugger point here, right? So in this case, this is my credit card response class. Card number is processed, false name is this, right? And now this is containing the null value. Press F10, right? And why I'm getting this, why I'm not getting the output? Because this is happening asynchronously, right? So you cannot see the output. Let me do one thing. Instead of calling this method using a process credit card, so what I'm trying to do is, right, I'm commenting these things, right? So what I'm trying to do is, I'm calling the process credit method, right, using a for each loop. For right, and inside this credit card collection, what I'm okay, this is my credit card collections. I'm putting that here, and here, okay, let me stop the debugger, right? So what I'm writing, variable response equals to await process card, and to this process card method, what I'm passing the variable item. right? So in this case, it will return me one JSON string, and I want to convert that JSON string to .NET object, right? So for that, I'm using this statement. Right? So now let me run the application. Okay, let me put the debugger point here. As well as let me put the debugger point here. Okay, I have already put the debugger point here, right? Okay. Right. So in this case, one item is processed. So this is the item number, card number, and credit card. I'm calling the process card method, right? So you can see once I call this product, this is the card details, right? And this JSON.serialize method will convert that to JSON string. And the JSON string will be in this format, right? So JSON string, you can see it is going to be stored in the form of a key value pair. So you can see this is my key, and this is my value, this is my key, and this is my value, and this is my key, and this is my value. So in this case, I'm returning a single JSON object. So this is, and in the case of a JSON string, it is going to be an array, right? So once you got the JSON string, right? So this response method will return that JSON string. You can see this is my JSON string. I want to convert that back to a .NET object, and only you can convert when your .NET object having this number, name, and each processed property, right? If the class what you want to convert, if that class contain a card number property, then this value what is happening that will be stored inside that card number property. If card number is not there, then this value will not be available, right? So basically whatever the key inside this JSON string, those keys should be available on your class. If not available, then you will not find the value. If two keys are available, then two values will be there. If three keys are available, then three value will be fine, right? So basically the key what I am using here, right? What the JSON object returning, that key should be the name of your properties in your class. Clear? And once you convert this JSON object to this credit card response, right now, if I press F10, then you will see that this class is filled with all these properties and the respected value from the JSON string. Clear? Guys,
Yes, sir.
any question from anyone?
Sir, I have one question. Is the session end or
Sorry?
Now, I have one question regarding the process card actually.
Okay.
In the async method process card, yeah. So in this method,
What is your question?
yeah, can you go to that method definition? Async process card method definition. But and on the definition, I can't see the definition. Yeah.
Definition,
So
this is the definition, no?
yes. Here the return type of this method is task of string. Okay. But in previous, like here we are returning message or we are returning JSON object. So like when we call the await method, that time it will return the actual message, the message which you are returning here. But if you don't call the await method, it is returning only task. Like
Yes.
so that I got confused. Like why
See, in this case, two things are there. One is a task of string, that is the return type of this method, right? And another is the string value, that is what it is returning, right? So two things. What this method is returning.
string.
So if your any async method wants to return any data, right? That is means what it is going to return a promise, and that promise is nothing but task. So task of string means this is the return type. But apart from that, if some exception occurred, then that exception is also going to be occurred as part of the task, right? So in this case, if you see, So whenever I'm calling the when all method, right? Whenever I'm calling the when all method, then at that time it is going to process the data, right? So whenever I'm calling, right, where I'm calling the when all method, right? So in this case, it is going to process the data, right? And as I'm using await operator, after processing the data, it is going to return me the output. Output in the sense only the string, right? So okay, let me remove these things, right? You can see it is going to return me the string array. That means whatever the operations are completed, right? For each task, it will return a string. And if we are executing multiple string, it is going to return multiple string. And if you want to store multiple string, then it is creating a string array. That is what you can see here. If you are executing a single task, then it is going to return a single string, right? So in this case, you can see I'm using a single task in this case, right? So it is returning me a single string, right? So you can see what is the data it is returning string. Yes or no? And in this case, this wait all method is going to return a string array, right? And in this case, what this await means, this process card means it in this statement, right? Whatever I'm creating here at this statement, the application is not processing, right? Right? We are just creating the task. We are just creating the task, and we are just creating the task in such a way that at a time 3 tasks are going to be executed, right? So whatever task we have, this is just a creation of the task, and when we pass that task to this when_all method, right? The way we have created the task, right? In the same way, the task is going to be executed, right? So how the task is going to be executed? Now it will execute 3 tasks simultaneously, and any more tasks they have to wait, right? And how the tasks are going to be executed by calling the process card method. Once one task completed, then it will release the semaphore. So in this case, in this example, this statement, whatever I have written, it is just creating the task. It is not, see, 2 things you have to remember: creating the task, executing the task, right? So in this case, the task is being created. And when the task is going to be executed, when we call this one. Clear?
Okay, so when we create the task, it will return task of string.
So
When we
here,
execute
the task of string means what? Here I'm creating a task. Now, the task is going to be a collection of a list of a string. Collection of a task, and that task is going to return a string. That is what I have created here. Why I have written this? Now this is written because this process card method is returning a string, and for that purpose I have write the return statement. If the process card does not have any return type, then no need to write the return statement here. Clear? Any more question from anyone else? Guys?
No.
Okay. Pratik, do you have any question? Pranali, Shubarna, Venkatesh, Freddy,
sir.
Mahesh,
No, sir.
Dai,
All
No
clear,
question.
sir. Thank you. All clear.
all clear. Okay. Okay, fine. So as of now, what we have discussed, we are executing multiple tasks, right? We are handling the response of a multiple task. We have also discussed how to limit the number of multiple tasks to be executed concurrently. We have discussed the use of await and async keyword, right? In the next session, what I'm going to discuss, suppose I'm executing a task, right? And if that task is taking more than expected time, how to cancel that task, right? Suppose I'm calling this process card method. This process card method taking more than 5 seconds, and I want, if the task is not completed in 5 seconds, please cancel the task. That is what we are going to discuss in the next session, right? So asynchronous programming is not only you have to understand async and await, right? There are many things that you need to understand. See, we have discussed a task that run today, how to upload the task, right? Suppose you don't want that task to be executed by the main thread, you can upload that by using the task.run. We have discussed how to limit the number of concurrent tasks using the semaphore sleep. We have discussed how to execute multiple tasks using the when.all method, right? We have discussed when the task is returning a simple string, how we can handle the response. If the task is returning a JSON string, then how we'll handle that response. That is what we have also discussed, right? So tomorrow we are going to discuss, right? And we have also discussed how to create the JSON object and how to convert your .NET object to JSON string, and how you can convert back from JSON object to your .NET string, right? And you should know these things, because semaphore slim, what is semaphore slim? I'm not discussing here because I have already discussed this class in detail. And if you do not understand what exactly the role and responsibility of semaphore slim, then how it is exactly working, right? If I'm passing the value 3, then how it process only 3 threads at a time. Those things we have already covered. I'm not going to recover those things again and again, right? And in tomorrow's session, and if you have question, what is the use of a release method? What is the use of wait async method? Then please go and watch the session where we have discussed the semaphore slim. And if you have any question, what is the use of a try and final block, you should have clear all these things, right? Whether any exception occurred or not, final block is 100% going to be executed. Right? This is the reason, and this is the reason why any resource releasing logic, it is always suggestible and suggestible to write those things inside the final block. So tomorrow we are going to discuss something called cancellation token, right? By using that cancellation token, you might be heard or not, I don't know, but using those things, you can cancel the execution of a asynchronous operation. That's it for today. Thank you. Thank you for attending the session in the morning.
Thanks.
Thank you, sir.